Um, I'm gonna welcome everybody. Michelle Arnott is on vacation, well deserved, and so she left Jack and I to run the show here today. And we're very appreciative of moving forward to come and present and update everybody on where they're at and what progress they're making, working off of the NESOM report. And they have some new, I think, like different looking for the word I'm thinking of, programs going to really work and try to improve long-term care. So from there, I'm gonna let Alice Bonner take it and we'll go from there.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks, Carrie, and just hello to everybody. Boy, this is a wonderful audience for us. We have a lot of colleagues and people who are part of the coalition on this call. So we're going to invite you to jump in at any point in time, of course. And we just really grateful that everybody is with us today. Mike, is that a moving forward hat or a different hat? I can't tell.
My moving forward hat is in storage somewhere. So, but
Okay, fair enough.
the sky
Okay.
though
Well,
the sky is Auckland, New Zealand though.
yes, that's
Oh,
right. You
wow.
glad you made it there. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna tag team a little bit here. I'm Alice Bonner. I'm the chair of Moving Forward. Again, some of you know me more than you probably ever thought you would, but I'm here with Director Isaac Longobardi and our Associate Director Samiri Maki, and we're just going to go through some of the recent progress and some of the things that many of you are working on. We've got people here from our steering committee. We've got people who are nursing home residents. We've got consultants, educators, medical directors. A great group, advocates. Maybe we'll get some folks from QIOs and ombudsman programs as well, or you may already be on the phone. So thanks for joining. So Isaac, if you want to pull up our slides, I can start by just giving a quick overview, and then we'll dive into some of the progress on a number of the action plans to let you know where we are going to be going in case you bump into us somewhere in your state. So next slide, please. We've been working not only with Great Panthers NYC, but with a number of other advocacy organizations you may or may not know or be a part of. So we work with the Consumer Voice. They're on our steering committee. We work with LTCCC. We had a call with them about a week ago. Center for Medicare Advocacy, CAN Manor, others that you may know. So again, we're going to talk about 3 specific action plans today out of the 9 that are posted on our website. So we would encourage you, and I'll start by saying, please visit our website if you haven't gone there multiple times already. I know some of you have, but the updates are there and the action plans are really worth going back to and saying, gosh, are they really doing these things and how are they coming along and that kind of thing. So thanks to Mary for chatting that in. Next slide. So the overview of the coalition, next slide. So we asked people this a lot, all different audiences, all different, disciplines and family members and nursing home residents and other people. What's the one thing you would change to improve older adults' experiences in nursing homes? And notice it doesn't say care, it doesn't say, health care. It just says their experiences of living in a nursing home because it's their life and it's their home. And again, I know that this audience on this call knows that very well, but I just want to make the point, and I'm sure Mary and Isaac will make it as well. Not everybody knows that it is their home and it is about their quality of life, not only the care and the quality that they receive. So when we ask people this, we'll show you on the next slide what people have said. And in particular, this is what nursing home residents have said to us. When we said, what could we do? They said, well, the care planning process could be more inclusive. And again, I know we have a couple of people who are part of that care planning process on this call. We'd love for you to chime in and tell us what it's like for you. But, people have said, they put the care plan in front of me and I don't even understand what it means. I don't understand the words. It's not written in language for me that I understand. People have said, I get asked to sign my care plan, but I've never given input into what goes into it. People haven't asked me about my goals and my preferences and priorities. So those are things that are very much on people's minds. And people also said to us that they want more involvement in choosing a roommate. I know people on this call have heard that a lot. You know what, you might not know, but it's really, we imagine that it must be challenging to have a roommate after not having a roommate for a long time, and it might not be somebody that you know. It probably isn't. And then, you know, being more involved as a community of engaged people and having it feel like a neighborhood in a community where you're really part of it, particularly with other residents. So those are all some of the things that residents said to us. And again, what we want to stress is part of moving forward is part of our fundamental mission and vision is really about hearing from nursing home residents. It's about their voice, and it's about acting on the things that they tell us are important. And that's why we're here. So next slide. And Isaac, just tell me when I'm slide 6, because I sort of lost track. But our vision and our mission are on this slide. And just so you know,
and then you can go ahead.
These were
well,
okay,
I was
saying,
ahead. Well, I'm happy to pick up here, Alice, or let you talk through this stuff. You know, this is what we're all about. You know, and I can let the words speak for themselves to some extent, but we're all about making sure that every nursing home will be a community in which lives are nurtured, residents are empowered, and where people want to work. And we want to do that by making vital changes in policy and practice through the power of bringing diverse voices together now. And that all really began with the NASEM report on nursing home quality, which came out in April 2022. And that the top line conclusion of that report was that the way the U.S. finances, delivers, and regulates care in nursing home settings is ineffective, inefficient, fragmented, and unsustainable. And I imagine if you're on this call, you probably agree with that statement. The report was, I think, formed as a response to the COVID crisis in nursing homes, and the tragedy that was for everyone who is touched or lived in a nursing home. But it went a lot deeper. It wanted to look at the real systems level challenges of nursing home care, the things that really caused and enabled that tragedy in nursing homes that's still ongoing in many places across the country. So the report came out. It was 605 pages, and the last 25 or so pages are recommendations for things the government, nursing homes, and others can do now to create real meaningful change, both in the short term and long term. And the funder of that report really wanted to make sure that it didn't sit on a shelf. That funder is the John A. Hartford Foundation. So working with Leading Age as a convener and host for the coalition, they launched the coalition in the summer of 2022, about a year and a half ago now. It's kind of amazing to say that. And the idea was that this coalition should bring together diverse stakeholders to take those 25 pages of recommendations and do something with them. And so we brought the coalition together. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our process over the last year and a half. This is a kind of a graphical diagram of that. And as I said, it began in last summer, or 2 summers ago now, and we brought together those diverse stakeholders. And now, as you can see, we're in the process of really doing work. So I'm going to walk you through these steps now. So as I said, we convened diverse stakeholders. These are some of the folks who are represented. And you know, this is a snapshot of what that looked like about, you know, at 6 months ago, a little more. And we continue to grow and expand these groups to serve the needs of the different projects we're working on. So as we continue to get more specific, to develop new partnerships, we're bringing people in who can really provide us the different perspectives we need. But it included advocates and ombudsmen. It included professional association staff. It included more, smart people from universities than I think any of us could care to imagine. The state agency staff and surveyors, labor representatives, direct care staff, residents themselves, and people running and operating nursing homes. So we divided these folks into 7 working committees. Each one was geared towards a goal from the NASEM report. So person-centered care was a goal. Workforce improvement was a goal. Accountability and transparency were a goal. Financing reform was a goal, et cetera. So we had 7 committees, and we asked them in the fall of 2020. Oh, and I should say quickly, they came from a number of organizations, and these are some of the organizations that those folks come from. But more specifically, these are the different organizations that raised their hand to support the coalition and say that they really believed in the coalition mission and work. And we're grateful that Gray Panthers is one of those organizations. You can spot their logo center right of your screen. And so we brought these folks together in the 7 working committees, and we gave them their first challenge in the fall of 2022, and that was to prioritize recommendations from the NASEM report related to their focus. So here you see the outcome of that prioritization for the technology committee. And we asked them to do that prioritization based on 4 value categories. Those were improving equity, ensuring that action taken would be feasible and sustainable, and promoting collaboration across stakeholder groups. And notice importance is not here, because we believe all of the recommendations from the NASEM report are important. We were asking them something specific and more focused, so that we could narrow down and prioritize work for the short term, so that we can really create change now. So over the course of the fall, those committees prioritized recommendations to work on. They wrote up brief summaries. We got some stakeholder input, some public input on those priorities. We made some revisions. And at that point, we moved into our next stage of work to action plan. And the idea was that over the course of the spring and early summer, we wanted committees to work together to say, based on those recommendations we prioritized, what can the coalition accomplish in just 1 to 2 years? What do we need to do that? And what are the specific steps and timeframes along the way? And so committees brought in different folks. They had tons of conversations. They did background research. They brought in new partnerships. They really focused on what matters to residents and the people working in nursing homes as well, and devised these plans for really advancing those recommendations in 1 to 2 years. Along the way, as I said, we created new partnerships and had amazing conversations with colleagues in various government agencies at the state and federal level. We continue to build relationships with these organizations and many others now. And they continue to help us understand what's feasible, what are the sources of funding and the resources available, and what opportunities can we capitalize within state and federal systems. And so in July, as I think many of you probably know, we posted these 9 action plans detailing what we were going to do to advance those 9 prioritized recommendations. And you can see them here. I'll read them aloud before Sumire, Alice, and I dive into just 3 of them. So those 9 action plans were about improving CNA compensation with Medicaid quality incentive payments, expanding CNA career pathways, enhancing surveyor training on person-centered care, designing a targeted nursing home recertification survey, increasing ownership data transparency and accountability, financing household models and physical plant improvements, developing a nursing home health information technology readiness guide, strengthening resident councils, and addressing residents' goals, preferences, and priorities. So we'll dive into now the work on resident councils, CNA career pathways, and household models and physical plant improvements. And I think with that, I can hand it back to you, Alice, to talk about those CNA career pathways and anything else.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. And hopefully, again, for some of you, I know that's review, but I think it's really important for the new people on the call also to just get that basic framework. You know, I'll just add a couple of things to what Isaac said. We're not a research organization. We don't, you know, we have a lot of researchers who are leading the work, and it's very important that we have that background in research. But we're not going out there saying that's our sole purpose. It's not. We're also not an advocacy organization in the same way that Gray Panthers NYC and others are, but we have a lot of advocacy organizations involved with us, and we try to be very careful about you know, how we work together and how we do our advocacy is really through education. You know, if people in Congress don't know who runs nursing homes, how they're financed, who lives there, that's a problem because they're making regulations, they're making policy. So we do advocate through educating and bringing people together. So, you know, CNAs are very important. Certified nursing assistants. I started out as a CNA when I was 19 years old. Some of you have as well. You can chat in if you've been a CNA, but you know, they're the heart and the soul of nursing home workforce, and they spend the greatest number of hours every day with residents, days, evenings, and nights, and they know things about residents that nobody else does, and they are a critical member of the interprofessional team, and they again they really need to be recognized in a different way than they are. So we have a whole workforce committee, and they're really focused on this goal to work to develop a standardized career pathway through a registered apprenticeship program, which is only one way. There's other ways as well. So I want to be really clear about that. The committee has decided that because we are a 2-year initiative, and we're funded through June 30th of 2024, it would make sense to really just focus on career pathways through registered apprenticeship programs. And I'll say a little bit more about. Next slide. And again, this is an action plan you can look at on our website. So, you know, there's different parts of the trajectory when you are coming into a particular type of work. And the first is recruiting. So recruiting people into the pipeline to become CNAs. Many of you are part of that process. There's also retention. So when people become a CNA, you know, do they leave after a few weeks or after a year or something like that? And unfortunately, turnover, as you guys know very well, is a huge part of nursing home workforce challenges. We have very, very high turnover. And so, you know, when people get burnt out and dissatisfied with their work, and especially if they're not getting paid well, which across the country, CNAs are not well paid, they don't get good benefits. Again, you guys know that, but not everyone knows that. So we need to do something about that. So next slide. So NAHCA is the National Association of Healthcare Assistants, and they did a survey, and this is of almost 1,500 nursing assistants. And they asked about, you know, if you were going to leave, you know, what would it take for somebody to hire you back and keep you? And as you can see, the top green line, you know, better wages and benefits. Yes, that's a big part of this, but also there's other things here, you know, scheduling flexibility, working with coworkers and supervisors who have a positive relationship, better training opportunities. That's a big one. People feel that they're not adequately trained for the responsibilities and the jobs that they have, et cetera. So you can see that even though wages and benefits, yes, are very important, and our team is working really hard on that aspect of it, CNAs have other things that they care about too. Next slide. So would you like, you know, to continue your career as a CNA and enable you to get additional education in order to do that? And look how many people said yes compared to said no. So, you know, people really do want those additional skills. They want that additional training, and they want to get compensated after that. Next slide. And then, you know, finally, what are the types of education people said they're interested in? I was surprised at this. I didn't know what people were going to say who are CNAs, but people really want to know more about dementia care. They want to specialize in that. They want to specialize in end of life or palliative care, infection control. So it's just interesting that, you know, what this tells us is we have to ask people. We have to ask them what's important to them, because they might say things that surprise us. And it's not up to us to be guessing what's important to them. We need to do our job, which is to ask. Next slide. So, you know, again, we talked about career pathways, and we said, you know, registered apprenticeships are one way of the benefit with an apprenticeship is if it's standardized at the federal level, and we do have a federal office of apprenticeships, so it is possible to standardize across states. You can take an extra credential and it will follow you if you go to another state, which right now does not always happen. So, you know, if you're going to put in all that time and extra effort on additional education and, you know, advancing your career, you want it to you know, be able to transition across these different things. You know, we do need to ensure that across these types of programs, these pathway programs, there is a bump in wages and there is, you know, an additional way to get more benefits, because those are, you know, these are largely older women, people who are minoritized, people who are single parents, very often raising a couple of kids. You know, something like 38% are on some sort of public assistance. So, you know, these are people who have a lot of social determinants of health that are impacting their lives as well. They can't get transportation, they can't get childcare. So all of those things are things to think about in terms of if you were designing a program for certified nursing assistants to advance in their careers as CNAs. Those are some of the things that could really make a difference. And so those are variable across a lot of these programs. And that's what the difference is telling us here. You know, there isn't always funding. Sometimes there is funding, but it's not always the same. Next slide. So again, you know, the reason that our committee chose to focus on these registered apprenticeships is it's one of the ways that we can work across states. So one of our partners on the coalition is SEIU 1199, and they have, you know, quality improvement programs and pathways through registered apprenticeships that are in multiple different states, and they've got some data behind that. So that's only one example, but it's a way that we can say, you know, that makes sense to go through registered apprenticeships if we have places where we can say it has helped or it has been successful and we've got data on it. The other thing is that there are something called industry intermediaries, and those are organizations that come and can partner with nursing home owners and people who are leading nursing homes to be able to apply for some of the funding that is out there, to be able to educate about the apprenticeship programs. So a lot of this, what we've learned, what I've learned, and our colleagues on the workforce committee, is that there's just such variability and fragmentation. It's not that these programs don't exist. They absolutely exist. But some states have way more going on and structured than other states. And we've talked to, our workforce committee has talked to at least 12 different states about these programs. And so we've learned a lot. Next slide. So again, I've already talked about this pretty much. There is a Federal Office of Apprenticeship website. If you go on it, you can, you know, look at a lot of this information that I already spoke about. You know, how do we replicate these programs? Who funds these programs? There's some of these programs that fall under, you know, learn to earn. So, you know, maybe you get a part-time job while you're getting trained, and then go from there. Next slide. This is a map showing you that some states have their own Office of Apprenticeship. So the ones that are dark blue, navy blue, those are the states that have their own Office of Apprenticeships, and the ones that are the teal colored, light blue, work with the federal office. But we can share with you that the federal office works with all the states, even the ones that have their own offices. So it's a pretty strong structure and infrastructure to be able to help out in different places in the country. Next slide. And, you know, again, these are some of the organizations that have come together behind the Moving Forward Coalition proposal. So, you know, HRSA is behind the GWEPs, the Geriatric Workforce Enhancement Program. Some of you on this call may be a part of a GWEP. But those are, you know, groups that bring education and geriatric education to communities. EQUIS is one of the you know, intermediaries, and HCAP is another one, and NACA is the CNA association we were talking about before. But, you know, we're really, our proposal, you can see here on the left, is to standardize and build out a replicable, you know, registered apprenticeship program, look at other pathways as well, but to collaborate with employers, because a big part of these programs, any of them, is that if CNAs, go through the training, they need to be compensated afterwards. They need to have higher wages and more benefits, as we said. So just paying for the training itself, which might be something like $1,500, it varies, but it might be something like that. But that's not the be all end all. We need to be able to compensate people for this incredibly important job that they're doing, that they just went through training to get even more advancement. So that's what our committee is working on really hard right now. Next slide. And so I think I've gone through most of these things. This is about what states can do. But again, this is very important because states have these offices of apprenticeships, or they can work with the federal office. The first thing that we need to do is really figure out what's going on right now in our state. So if you guys, a lot of you are from New York, I see people who are from other states as well. But, Isaac and Sumeri and I are based up in Massachusetts, but all over the country, we've talked to lots of states, and a lot of people in those states who work with nursing homes or are operating nursing homes don't know about the programs to get people into the pipeline. So that recruitment piece. And they don't know about programs necessarily to strengthen and provide more oversight or more supervision and coaching for retention. So again, investing in retention is very important. Next slide. All right, so I will just say one more thing, which is I'm going to be in North Carolina next week with Kezia Scales and Betsy White, who are two of our co-chairs of the workforce group, and we're going to be speaking to the councils of state government. So that's about 400 or 500 people signed up for that national conference, and we're going to be talking about these initiatives. So please feel free to chat in any questions. I'll read through the chat here while I turn it over to Sumeri, who's going to talk about resident councils.
Great. Thank you, Alice. So Alice took us through one of our action plans. We have another action plan on strengthening resident councils. We know that resident councils center resident voices and are truly a vital part of community life. And we also know that there's also a lot of resources and existing work already happening across the country around resident councils, but it's variable. So we want to build on those best practices that exist and bolster it. And so by doing so, we assembled a resident council guide for nursing home residents and staff as a resource to strengthen and sustain resident councils. And our goal is to develop this guide and to pilot it or implement it in at least 4 nursing homes. And the idea is that we can learn from these nursing homes how we can continually improve the guide. This is the recommendation in the NASEM report that Isaac had shared earlier, that we built this action plan around. It emphasizes the need for more research on best practices of resident councils, and of course its significance as they serve to empower residents. Next slide, please. Great. So where are we in this process? We've conducted a review of all the existing tools and guides that are out there. And we took that and developed a resident council guide. And I did see a question on family councils. I know in that literature review that we did, we also did collect a lot of resources and guides on family councils as well. I'm hoping we can speak to that a little bit after our presentation too. But we took that review and developed a resident council guide based on what we found, and we collected feedback from residents, from quality improvement organizations, from ombudsmen. And in this guide, you might be asking what is included in the guide. It's meant to be a how-to of sorts of getting started, what that first meeting would look like in setting it up, best practices, common challenges, and how to address the issues that are brought up in resident councils. And we made sure and are making sure that this guide isn't prescriptive as possible. We know that every nursing home community looks different, and we want this guide to be a tool to set up the resident councils that make the most sense for that community. And so now we're in the process of preparing for the pilot, which we're hoping we can kick off early next year in January. We've had the opportunity to partner with the New Jersey Ombudsman Program, and we'll be pilot testing the guide in 4 diverse nursing homes in New Jersey. And we've really considered many criterias when selecting these nursing homes, both size, for-profit, nonprofit status, geography, etc. And we're excited to see what we learn from that pilot. Next slide, please. And I will pass it off to you, Isaac.
Thank you, Samira. So I will talk about one more action plan, and this one is about financing the renovation of existing nursing homes. They're often traditional models with, double bedrooms, shared bathrooms, long hallways, lack of community and outdoor space, and a number of other issues which you all know very well. And incentivizing the renovation of those buildings, ideally to become more household-like models, but also, simply buildings with private bedrooms, private bathrooms, access to community spaces, access to outdoor spaces. And so we're looking at both, we're looking at a number of state approaches and one particular federal approach to this work. And I'll share a little about each of those projects. First, before I do so, I'll say, if you know about a nursing home that is renovated in the last 10 years, we want to talk to them. We've heard from 73 nursing homes already about their renovations and are doing some more in-depth interviews and are really looking to hear about different financial and other supports they may have received from the state or federal government to make the changes they did make, as well as what changes they made. So if you know about one of these nursing homes, you can either email us or you can fill out this brief survey here at this QR code. Okay, so first I'll talk about our work in states. We know that there are a lot that states can do to drive the transition of nursing home physical plants to more home-like and community-oriented spaces. These are some of the ways, some of the mechanisms that states can use. Quality incentive payments built into their Medicaid programs, boosted reimbursement rates for private rooms. For those of you who heard our discussion with the Ohio State Task Force, they've been able to do the second one. So they've boosted their Medicaid reimbursement rate for private bedrooms, which is a huge boost to nursing homes' ability to really financially sustain a smaller number of beds, which is often the case when you renovate to have private rooms. We also know that states can consider direct grants under a number of programs, special loans with more favorable terms, various forms of regulatory support, and critically including these physical plant transformations in the priorities that the state has around age-friendly elder services, around more livable communities, around dementia friendliness, and around health infrastructure, right? We need to make these changes part of state priorities overall in order to drive the changes. So we're convening a group of state leaders, 10 leaders across 8 states. They range from a state senator to a person in charge of the master plan on aging, to folks high up in Medicaid offices in states, to talk about things they've tried in their states among these approaches, how they worked, maybe how they didn't work, and best approaches going forward for state policymakers to take. So we'll have a series of those conversations with those folks, kind of, drain their brains for best practice ideas, and then develop that into hopefully what will be a helpful menu of options that state policymakers can deploy going forward. The other thing we're up to is at the federal level. So, we know that the federal government provides a lot of money to nursing homes through CMS, both through its Medicaid funding and through its Medicare program as well. What we've learned as a coalition is that the Department of Housing and Urban Development is also a really important funder of nursing homes, or not so much funder, but financial backer for nursing homes. So they insure the mortgages that nursing homes take out from private lenders when they're going to renovate or build new buildings. So we got really interested in this because we said, you know, is HUD insuring mortgages on any nursing home? Are they insuring mortgages on renovations that are really going to improve quality? What's the thrust here? And what we found is that the HUD program is really not as tied to quality improvement and physical plant transformation as it could be, right? There's a lot HUD can do with that program to really drive nursing homes towards the type of physical spaces we want. So we got in touch with the office at HUD in charge of this work. And we said, listen, we have some ideas for you. And they said, well, that's really interesting. Can you get more specific? And they connected us with some of their colleagues at this group, HMAC, the Healthcare Mortgagee Advisory Council, and they're a group of bankers. They finance nursing home constructions. And so we got those guys on a series of 4 phone calls, asked them a ton of questions about the HUD program, asked them a ton of questions about how they do business, and start to think with them about what some opportunities are for creating some incentives within the HUD program. And so on October 3rd, we wrote up a very brief memo to HUD that said, here are 3 things you could do basically tomorrow to make your program really incentivize quality improvement of physical spaces. And we're excited that we'll be meeting with them next week to talk through those ideas. And, you know, hopefully we can really encourage them to make their program a force for quality improvement in nursing homes and really create the buildings that residents and staff and families want. So that's our work on physical plant transformation of nursing homes. And I don't know, Samira, if you'd like to kind of give a little wrap up before we turn to Q&A.
Sure. Thank you, Isaac and Alice. So today we did a little bit of a deep dive into 3 of our action plans that we're working on, which I hope help visualize what our coalition is doing. We're excited to continue working on these action plans that focus on practice, policy, workforce, and surveys to improve nursing home resident quality of life and care. One of, if not the biggest strength of this coalition, I think, is that we engage such diverse individuals, residents, advocates, providers, folks in policy, et cetera. And we want to continue breaking down those silos and continue as a collective. And of course, in doing so, we want to continue to engage diverse stakeholders across the country. And intersecting all of that, we want to continue to amplify the voices of nursing home residents, care partners, and direct care workers. So thank you all for listening to us today. Please do check out our website if you want to learn more. And we also have a newsletter that comes out monthly as well if you want to sign up. I'll chat that in. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
Thank you, guys. We really enjoy getting to learn more of what is going on today, because it's going to take every one of us to improve the system that we're living in. And whether we need the home today for us or tomorrow, or that our loved ones there, it's going to take everyone to fix it. The work is so interesting, how you've gotten so many people from so many different parts of the country. You guys are juggling moving parts like I've never seen, which is great. Does anybody have any questions at the moment?
And I'll ask specifically, Carrie, if I can tag on to what you just said.
Yes,
there are a lot of moving parts. And yes, Isaac, Sumeri, and I are very tired. We're happy for any assistance from people, because, this means a lot to us, but more importantly, it means a lot to you guys. This is not work we are doing. We're highlighting and showcasing work that you all are doing. And again, it's just great that we get to work with a number of people who are, I know we've got, again, researchers on this call. We've got educators. We've got people who work with surveyors. We've got people who are doing family counsel. It's great to see you. We talked just last week. And lots of other input. People have been doing quality work with Pioneer Network and other organizations for a long time. So I would just say, we'd love to hear from you guys. Like, you heard us talk about workforce, you heard us talk about resident councils, you heard about physical plant changes, but you might have things and ideas that we didn't even mention. And you might be wondering, gosh, are they working on them? Or you might just have a best practice or something you did with a team in a nursing home where either you live or you work or you visit. And we'd love to hear about that. Jack, you have your hand up, sir.
Where'd you go, Jack?
These have been great thumbnail reviews of the action plans for moving forward. As the advocacy for a nursing home transformation progresses, I'm seeing more of a coalescing, meaning now that things are getting more specific, the moving forward recommendations and action plans, there are numerous other things that are coming together. And this also offers an opportunity for not only everybody on this call, but for maybe about 1 million or so people to come together and smack the crap out of those the politicians so that actual true transformation occurs. I'm not talking about reform, which is around the edges, and even things like caregiver education. And that is so important, but it's still around the edges. How do we transform, as you point, the experience of living in long-term care and in more specifically nursing homes? How do we change that from that medical model to a community model? How do we ensure that people have the dignity? That's a beautiful word, but what does that mean? Everybody is entitled to their own room and their own bathroom, as well as their own window, and as you properly noted, access to the outdoors without locked doors. This should not be incarceration. This should be care and love. Now, we're starting to see this, all of these things. Now we just have to make sure that those in charge and those who write the checks and those of us who are on the front lines are able to do this. And the key, the key is not the advocates. The key is the resident themselves and the family members or those who advocate for them. So for all of the people here and for moving forward, and I gotta say, for Gray Panthers, brava.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said, as always. Thanks, Jack. And you did talk about family members in that group, and I know Janine Ferrari is on. And Janine, do you want to say a little bit more about what you guys are doing to really try to strengthen family councils around the country?
Sure. Thank you so much for giving me this voice, this opportunity. Hi there, everyone. I'm Janine Ferrari. I'm the Family Council Liaison for the Long-Term Care Community Coalition, or the LTCCC to shorten that. And I have taken on the enviable, I think, task of helping people form family councils in every long-term care residence across the country, including Guam and Puerto Rico. I had the good fortune to meet with a lot of ombuds people at the National Consumer Voice Conference last month, and made some great connections, and meeting with just people who think that they want to form one, not sure how to form one, what it is. I formed one in my dad's nursing home 3.5 years ago, and we've made a lot of change at his nursing home since then, working with the administration sometimes, but sometimes kind of against them. But because we are resident-centered and resident-directed, as my friend Carrie Lejalal has taught me to say and think, it's hard to say no when you have the same path and the same mission as a nursing home administrator. So if anyone is in a nursing home, or your loved one is in a nursing home and you'd like to form a family council there, let me know. I'll put my contact information in the chat. Thank you for the forum. And thank you for all the work you're doing.
Back at you. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Carrie.
So, and Aunt Alice said it, Janine said it, families are a big part of what is going to change and make this move forward. Every name that I know that's on these screens are professionals. And thank God we have all the professionals, but they need us. They need the families. The reason, we tell people all the time, the reason I have a voice in this game at the moment is because my story is different. So when people hear my story, they only have to hear it once because it's so different than everyone else's. And they need to hear from us. They need to hear from the families because, first of all, especially our legislators, once you annoy them enough, they'll usually give in.
And
it really does make a difference.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
It does make a difference. I also want to say thank you, Carrie, for that. And one of the points that Sumire and I make a lot when we're working on this resident council initiative with New Jersey is, engaging family members does not mean skipping over the residents or not listening to the residents. But, a lot of people, that can get confusing. And we want to be really, really clear about that. And Janine and I, we talked about that too, but that both are important and they do different things. And it is possible to keep the focus front and center on the nursing home residents and involve families. And that doesn't happen in a lot of nursing homes, but it happens really well in other nursing homes. So we need to do that. I wanted to ask to see if either Jeanette or Cindy Napolitan, who are two of our wonderful coalition members, and both of them are living in nursing homes. I don't know if you guys want to say anything related to anything we talked about today or add any work that you're doing specifically.
I would like to say that I think with what you just said about family councils, also working with resident councils, a lot of time our family members or residents that have family members, they're usually very, very involved. It's unfortunate for the handful or more that do not have any family at all. So they're, and if they're not able to communicate themselves, that's where I feel like the resident council can step in and advocate for them on the behalf of their lack of family members. Does that make sense? It's like an extra voice if they're not able to for themselves. I work as president of the resident council. I work not only with the family members, and we do have a small family council here, but I've made it a point to get to know my residents' family members as well. So they feel like there's a connection, not just with the facility looking out for them, but the other residents looking out for each other. And isn't that really what community is all about? So that's what we really need to build for, is that we work together, not only with the facility and the loved ones, but also those that don't have anyone to speak up for them. I get to be that voice. I take that very seriously.
Yes, you do. You do. And it's great. You always add some great comment at the end of steering committee calls every month. So we love that.
Yes, on the question about family councils, we have attempted to start family councils here in my nursing home. And a lot of times what happens is we have a resident that lives here and then they pass. And then we lose that family person that really wants to become involved. And so it's been difficult to start one here, but I'm glad to have that information and your phone number and email address to maybe help us get a way to get family members to join and to become a bigger voice here at my facility. So thank you for that information.
Cindy, one thing we did at my nursing home is we got our social services engaged with our family council so that there's always a follow-up behind us. And then of course they relate to the administration, but that's an added support you might want to look into.
Okay, I will do that. Thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, that's great. I love the connections. And I think Francie had her hand up, and then we'll go back to you, Janine. But Francie, did you have
Yes, yeah, thanks so much.
A question or a comment?
Yes, thank you. I'm curious to whether or not you've reached out to any of the local and or national bar associations, because of course the law plays a very critical role in the misfeasance, malfeasance, and or meeting of statutory standards by nursing homes, their employees, agents, assigns, owners, etc. So I haven't heard one word about law in this conversation, and I'm wondering why.
I love that you asked that, and I'll start, and Isaac can jump in too, and Sumeri, because we all work with various folks who we certainly have people who practiced law for a long time and are now retired and have decided they want to be involved in this because they want to give something back and they want to use their background as an attorney to and sometimes they've been people who've worked in policy. But the other connection that we have is the Department of Justice. So again, in all of these cases, I want to be very, very clear. If an organization or a federal agency like the Department of Justice or the Administration for Community Living or CMS or any of the ones you're familiar with, if they're involved with the coalition, it's really representing the role that they play in that agency. And they're a connector for us, and they stay connected. They tell us what they're doing, they hear what we're doing, and we try to really communicate back and forth. So the Department of Justice, as you know, huge federal agency, but they have branches, they have regions. And so the regions have local people who know more about the bar associations and the things happening in the states. But I think your point is really well taken. And, maybe we should reach out more directly to the current leadership at the Bar Association, where we have some connections. Because you're right, when we talk about policy, we sometimes talk about it in that using that language. We don't talk about the laws and the legislative approach and the regulations. Sometimes we do, but Isaac or Sumeri, what would you add to that? Do you guys work with anybody on any of the committees that you're involved with that are from the Bar Association? I'm not familiar.
One of our work group leads is a retired lawyer working with the American Bar, who formerly worked at the American Bar Association, as you said, Alice, and works with us closely on our work on household models. I agree that I think the legal component is really important. The coalition is focused on those NASEM recommendations, and I think it may be a good point that something among several gaps in the NASEM report, which folks have pointed out to us. One of them may be some of those legal issues. Thanks, Francie.
Yeah, well, with all due respect, you've already acknowledged that the Justice Department is a mammoth bureaucracy. Let's be real. It's great to speak with aspirational language and kick around the words policy and policy issues and reports, but you have to drill down. All politics is local. All nursing homes are political entities. They exist within communities. They are either catered to by local politicians or they are not. But all nursing homes are beholden to the ecosystem in which they operate. And it is not at the Justice Department level, and it is not just one retired attorney. If you're going to be real about systematically changing inside out, not outside in, nursing homes, you've got to go for the jugular. And the only way to do that systematically, successfully, and soundly, in my opinion, is to get heavyweight bar associations on the West Coast and the East Coast, the middle of the country, who have committees that can advocate, that can push and can deliver the real deal as it relates to changing the landscape, both legal, societal, political, social, and financial. The law is the spine within which the nursing home system operates. To ignore them is to suggest there's no patient on the table, but we sure as hell are cleaning up the operating theater. I mean, I would laugh, but it's such a serious oversight.
Right, right. So I appreciate that, and we all do. We'll connect on a follow-up call if you're open to it. We'd love to follow up because this is a big topic for sure. I think Janine, you had your hand up again.
No, I think I forgot what I was going to say. It was probably just more about family council. Oh, I know. I think Cindy or someone else was talking about, I think it was Cindy Napolitan, how when family members, their loved one passes in a family council, how they just step aside. And I have to just say, ironically, my dad's our own family council, the steering committee is mostly made up of people whose loved ones have passed in the last 3 years, and they hang on. No one is to say that you have to leave once your loved one passes. If you have a mission in mind, stay on until that mission has been reached. The language in the regulations is family and friends. Right. So you're a friend, you become a friend.
Right.
Stay on.
It's one of the ways also to keep the nursing home as a leader in the community, not just in the health system, but in the community, because people from the community come and visit. Something like 50% of nursing home residents around the country never have a visitor, never. That's a huge number. So, if that's, and I see heads nodding. So if that's the case, again, getting more people into the nursing home to, see what's going on there and be part of it can really be important. So, Carrie, I think we'll turn it back to you. I want to, again, on behalf of our team, I want to say this was a great conversation. It's always a great conversation when we're with this group of Gray Panthers NYC. And, I hope you see yourselves as part of what we are as a coalition, because it brings together all the great work that you're doing. We want to support it. We want to work together, and we want to continue to have you be the leaders with us as we move forward. So Carrie or Jack, we'll turn it back to you guys.
Thank you guys. Thank you, everyone. This has been a great conversation. Especially when you get into the part of the families. I don't refer to where my son lives as his home. It's our home. We've been there 10 years. When I have an issue and I go to our administration, I remind them continually, I'm not just speaking for my son. I'm speaking for every resident in this building. And it is important that we do know who else is living in the buildings with our loved ones, because we can make everyone's life better. Today we posted on our Facebook page, our website, our annual review of highlights of what Gray Panthers NYC has done this past year. And when we go back and look at it, we were all amazed at what we have accomplished this year. And it's in the chat also if you'd like to see it, or go to our website. Today is Giving Tuesday. Whether you're giving to Gray Panthers or you're giving to National Consumer Voice, if there's an organization you believe in and you can give today, it really does help all of us do the work we're doing. Jack, do you have anything to add or want to give people a little bit of a highlight about next month?
Well, two things. Yeah, Carrie just said it's Giving Tuesday. We'll be happy to take some of your eagerly and happy contributions to make sure that we can continue to doing this important work. As Carrie said, we've made enormous strides. And as Alice has said, we've become almost an essential partner, an opportunity as a think tank, and an opportunity to explore many issues. Will each one of you on this call help us continue to do that? That would be a beautiful thing. And now, secondly, as Carrie suggested, our next Transformation Tuesday will be focused on my recent trip to Africa. I went to Malawi, the country of Malawi, to deliver graduation remarks at the only home care training center in the country. So what we're going to do for our next Transformation Tuesday is that we are assembling people who are part of the putting together a long-term care system in Malawi, including former ministers, the the guy who has put together this training center, this training college, some other very interesting and important efforts in the country of Malawi that deal with the issues not only of older people, but of people who have been displaced and those who have been accused of witchcraft, as well as those who are disabled. Malawi does not have a long-term care system, and it would be wonderful if we, Grey Panthers, can be the catalyst for the creation of that. So I encourage all of you to join that Transformation Tuesday next month, and we'll see where we can take this.
Yes, thank you so much. We appreciate all of you. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.